you were looking at that and got disconnected. That's okay. Hey, this is Meridith, Elliott, Powell. You know what time it is. Sorry, we're fiddling with the connection. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Mountain. Mark and I are in Denver, Colorado at a conference. Again, we are doing the show live together.
Because we do it live, we're watching the sun come up here in Denver. We're at the National Speakers Association, where Mayor serves as chairperson. Honored to be able to have her as the chairperson of this great association. We had a great show this morning.
We do. Let's get started. Let's hit the intro and tell you what we got on deck. All right, welcome back. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning. You know what time it is. It is time for Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to sell effectively and logically. So, Mark, what is on tap for today?
Well, we got a great question because it really hits home with the back half of the year. We're going to talk about how to exceed your goals when you faced with a declining budget. You know, you get money sucked out that you don't have for golf tournaments, trade shows, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the topic. Question comes from Regina in Milwaukee. She says, I'm in manufacturing sales. Things are getting slow. We just had our mid-year meeting and they came down with the bad news with inflation, interest rates, election year, sales are slowing. And now they're cutting our budget. Fewer trade shows, fewer golf events, fewer lunches, and the list goes on and on. How am I supposed to make my budget? How am I supposed to make my quota if I don't have money to spend?
What a good question. You know, I don't know about you, but it was funny. I was working on some comments that I've got to make for the National Speakers Association. And I was kind of talking about, you know, the fact that the marketplace is at the same time becoming overcrowded. We have so much competition out there, combined with the fact that it is, you know, whether or not it's factual that the marketplace is a challenge. Decision makers believe it, and things are slowing down. But number one, you have got to realize that when the marketplace slows down, that is your best time to sell. That means new challenges, new problems. So number one, I realize they have taken away your trade shows. They have taken away your golf tournaments. You got to do this the old-fashioned way. You got to set up calls and you've got to do it one-to-one.
You know what? There's still so many things that you can do, and you do one-to-one. Hey, you may not be able to have the budget for lunch, but you still got the budget for coffee. You can still take people to coffee. You can still do things. But hey, here's the whole thing. It's called the good old-fashioned telephone. Just pick up the phone. But here's the whole thing. You may be facing declining, difficult times. Your customers probably are, but you don't bark negative news to your customer. You got to put the optimistic face on it. You got to help them through their challenges. And yes, they will want to have you be talking to them.
The second thing I'm going to say is you have to really protect your time. You know, when the marketplace is good and you're inviting people to golf tournaments and you're heading to trade shows and things, we all do it. I do it. Mark does it. You do it. You waste time calling on people that really aren't the highest and best use of your time. They may never buy, or they're just going to buy a little. You can't do that anymore. You have to get really, really protective. So if I were sitting with you and I were sitting with your sales team, I would really sit down and build a prospect list with people that have the highest and best potential to buy from you. I just did this with a client based out of Canada, and we built a criteria. So it means that every time you make a call, I literally put it on an Excel spreadsheet. Every time you make a call, you put the prospect in there, and if the prospect doesn't meet 7 of the 10 in that first interview, you move on to another prospect. Are you going to miss a few here and there? Absolutely. But in a declining market, you have got to protect your time.
That is so key. And you know what? The other thing that I find so interesting, you may not have money for the golf, you may not have money for the trade show, but you know what I find? Salespeople can spend so much time preparing to get the right people into that suite for that baseball game, or the right people. That's time that really they should be selling, but they're spending so much time managing the event that I found, you know what's interesting? It's amazing. You really don't lose any sales effort. It just shifts. You got to go back to the old-fashioned way, pick up the telephone and make it happen. But I'll tell you what, do not get a negative attitude just because your budget's been cut. Okay, please. I watch people. I was in corporate, and I remember. I mean, I had to cut the numbers, and I had to tell salespeople, well, fine, okay, I can do one of two things. I can either cut all the trade shows, so forth, or I can cut you. Which would you rather have? And they said, okay, yeah, you're making the right decision.
Understand that if things are slow, it is because the marketplace is shifting. So the way that you sold, the questions that you're asking, they need to change with it. Your clients or your prospects are experiencing different challenges. It is a myth that people are price sensitive. It is a serious myth. What they are sensitive about is paying for something they don't need or want. So you've got to figure out, with the marketplace shifting, what is it that they really need or want?
And that means really honing in on their top one or two issues. We talk about this a lot, but you can't dance around. And I love what you said up front. You got to qualify that prospect if they don't meet 7 of the 10, spot on with that. Because if they don't measure up, you got to move on. But what this means is that you're probably going to have to spend more time with those qualified prospects. Because again, you got to create exceptional value for them to want to spend money with you. Otherwise, they're just going to pass, because they're going to use the same excuse your company is using for cutting.
Yeah, I was listening to, I love what Dave Sanderson is saying here, member of the mastermind. And for anybody in the mastermind group, I'm going to give you that criteria spreadsheet so you can build one for your own. I can't tell you how powerful it is to have a spreadsheet like that, because it keeps you objective. I go out, I call on Mark. I really like him. We're having a good time. We laugh, we cut up. I'll overlook the fact that he's not really a good prospect. But if I come back and I have to put it on a sheet of paper, and I have to really ask myself, is the budget there? Is he the decision maker? Is there a sense of urgency? Then I really know, is it a good use of my time? But kind of what you were talking about, I was listening to a podcast the other day on with John Maxwell, and he was saying, he said this: do you wing it or do you work it? Now, he was talking about leadership and communications, but it made me think about sales. I mean, one of the gifts we have as salespeople, all of you have as salespeople, is the ability to think on your feet. You can go out, you can strike a conversation with somebody, you can be interested. It is a gift. But in some ways, as a sales professional, it's a little bit of a curse, because we wing it instead of work it. And that's really what Dave Sanderson was saying here, is that you've got to put in the work so that you're really going in there and having a good call. You've got to understand that in the mind of your customer right now that you're calling on, they're thinking, oh my God, I probably got to lay a couple of people off. We're not getting the sales we need to get. And then all of a sudden, here comes a sales professional trying to add to a budget that I've already tightened. You need to be prepared when you go into that call.
Oh, and that brings up something else that's so fascinating. I've seen so many situations where, hey, we got the baseball suite. We got the great suite. We need to get 20 people in there. And you know what happens is the salespeople wind up stuffing the suite with people who really aren't the best decision makers. But they know their boss is going to shoot them if they don't have 20 people in that suite. So again, they wind up misusing their own time. And what are they doing? They're basically winging it instead of working it back to your. So, hey, getting rid of all that stuff, you know what it does? I think it creates, it gets you to focus in on what your job is. And that is to sell, to create incremental opportunities for your company.
Yeah. The other thing I'm going to say is that you really, really need to forget about your own problems. When I was a kid, my mother used to say to me that the fastest way to get past your own problems is to focus on somebody else's. And those are such wise words. So forget about your own goals, forget about your own budget, forget about any heat you're going to take from your sales leadership. Sell with your heart. Go out there and say, oh my gosh, the marketplace is shifting. My clients are tightening budgets. They are in pain, and I have got to help them. Take that mindset. Selling from your heart versus from your head, it is a total different energy feel.
And that means your customer needs you now more than ever. I love to say, hey, if you have the ability to help someone, you owe it to them to reach out to them. And in these little more difficult times, again, every industry responds differently. You've got customers, they need to hear from you. You've got to reach out to them. But I'll tell you what, like I said, don't focus on your problems because they don't want to hear your problems. They could care less. They have their own challenges. And that means you've got to be able to just listen to them and go back to the basics, hone in on what their challenges are, and just keep diving deeper, 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 deeper.
Yeah, the other thing I'm going to say is that you need to educate yourself about how the shifts in the marketplace are impacting them. My advice to you would be honestly to call up 10 of your best customers, people you've already sold to, people that, maybe there's another opportunity there, maybe it doesn't matter. And just say, listen, the marketplace is really shifting. I'm noticing some trends in the industry. Can we just have a chat about that? Because when you go into a prospect in a challenging marketplace where a budget is tight, it is a completely different conversation. If you walk in and say, listen, I know there are a lot of challenges in the industry right now. We work with a lot of people just like you. Here are the challenges that we're seeing. Here are the things that we can do to help you. People are going to buy from you because you understand them, not because they understand you.
And I'm going to challenge, go one level deeper. Talk to your customers' customers. In other words, find out what's happening with your customers' customers. Because when you do, it's amazing what insights, and so many times your customers aren't even aware of it. Because you're going to be able to see things differently. Because again, we're all guilty of standing so close to the trees we don't see the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And you can come in and be able to do that. So this really, I tell you what, this view it as an opportunity that things are getting cut. Because again, it's going to allow you to separate yourself also because you know what? Your competitors are probably going through the same thing. And let your competitors whine and moan over no golf, over no trade shows. You go out and make it happen.
Yeah. Now, I love what Dave is saying here. It's not about the resources you don't have. It's about the resourcefulness that you do have. What a great line. The other thing is, talking about the fact that your competitors are going to be moaning. I always think, and I really believe that when the marketplace gets challenging, it gets easier to sell because there's less competition in the marketplace. There's less people in the marketplace looking for business because salespeople get afraid. The moment that this gets challenging, the moment that you might be told no, it really gets hard. The other thing I'm going to say is that you need to realize that the work that you are doing now is going to determine the business you get when the marketplace turns back around. We ebb and flow. Look at history. We have good markets, we have bad markets. We have good times, we have bad times. Everything's going to stall because it's an election year, not just here in the US, but in 70 countries around the world. The world's going a little crazy right now. So we're in a stall moment. You still do the work because when things, when the clouds clear, and they always clear, people are going to remember who showed up right now.
That's why it's so key not to take your foot off the gas. Because if you take your foot off the gas, it's going to allow somebody else to come in. Because again, if you wait, say, well, I'm going to wait for the market to come back before I get out there selling, you are always going to respond too late. You are going to be behind the curve and you've got to be out there. So stay focused. And the other piece about trade shows, your company may be cutting back on trade shows, might be cutting back on this and that. And your competitors are too. So you know what that means? Your customers are being exposed to fewer salespeople, just as what you said earlier. So in other words, seize the opportunity. It is never not a good time to sell. The best time to make a sales call? Right now.
Yeah. So as Natalie says, every no is one step closer to yes. Here's another thing. Here's another idea is that suppose there is a golf tournament or a trade show that you really think corporate, it wasn't a good idea to cut. Because listen, we've all been boots to the ground salespeople, and corporate makes a decision that is not in our best interest. Happened to every single one of us. Go back and show corporate how they will get return on investment from that golf tournament. And it's good practice for you because, again, like Mark said, so often you walk into a golf tournament, you call 3 people to play, but either they're not the right 3 people, or even if they are, you don't strategize on how to ask for the business by the end by the end of the event, or really how you're going to get in there and build that relationship and build that connection. So they'll put those events back in there if you can show return on investment. The reason trade shows get cut and the reason golf tournaments get cut and everything else gets cut is because they don't see a direct line to how that is bringing revenue in.
Well, that's because salespeople are so focused on the trade show itself or the golf tournament or the sporting event suite, whatever it might be, and not on using that as a tool to actually get the business. And that's one of the key things. One of the key things that I used when I was in corporate. Okay, we're going to be at this trade show. I want to see documentation of what are the meetings that are set up before the trade show begins. What are the meetings we've got set up, that are going to take place? What's the whole strategy, the pre, during the event, and post? And I'll tell you what, it just comes back. You got to understand your customer and focus on your customer, not on the event. So cutting events, I think, is a great cleansing process for sales managers to do. Because I was one of them, and I multiple times would cut budgets, and it worked great.
Yeah. Thanks, Dwayne. Yeah, great comment about showing up. I mean, it is so important that people remember who showed up, but showed up intelligently. I mean, do not show up looking for business, trying to sell me something when you realize I am going through a challenging time. You have got to show up ready to roll your sleeves and get to work. Last night here at the National Speakers Association conference, we had a reception for the International Association of Speakers Bureaus. And I got to talking to one of the bureaus, one of the management companies, about COVID. And it was so interesting to me that so many speakers in the middle of COVID, at the beginning of it, just said, I'm going to pull back. I'm not going to participate. I'm going to just see what happens. And I was talking to the management company, the woman who runs it, and I said, it was so interesting to me because all I could think of is, oh my God, my customers need me. Now, it took probably 2 months before things turned around, before we figured it out. So I was doing stuff, not making any money at all for 2 months. But the work that I did in that 2 months ended up making COVID one of my best years on record. 2020 was a great year for me. But you have got to, kind of to Dwayne's point here, you have got to go in and go, the marketplace is shifting. Not only keep your foot on the gas, you need to floor it. Like, you got to do more. Because again, the marketplace will shift and you do not know when it will shift. But if you didn't do the work, you're going to miss the boat.
And you're going to learn skills.
Yeah.
You're going to learn skills. I had a great conversation last night and talking with somebody, same situation. And she made the comment, she said, what I really learned was how to sell.
Yeah.
Well, I really learned how to listen to the customer and really understand what the needs are. And so this is the whole thing that sometimes we can become fat and lazy based off of things that are given to us. So I'm going to go back to Regina. Seize this as an opportunity for you to improve your selling skills. Hey, any of you facing declining budgets, facing difficult times, this is the time to improve your skills, and you're going to come out of it even stronger because, again, everything is cyclical.
Yeah. And, Regina, you were talking about the fact that it's been a challenge already. And if it's been a challenge already and now corporate is cutting some of the avenues that you were using, I question whether those avenues were working, right? Like if you're struggling with a budget already, I mean, I think as sales professionals, listen, I do it too. I kind of get stuck. You said it so well, fat and lazy. I do it too. It's like, well, I'm sending emails this month. And you know what? I need to be real with myself. They're not working. And if they're not working, I need to change something up. So if things are being taken away, if you corporate did what you should have done for yourself, and what you need to do for yourself as a sales professional is every couple of months, you need to ask yourself, is this working? Am I effective? What do I need to be doing differently? And if you were not hitting your sales goals with all the fat stuff in there, I'm not sure the fat stuff is the problem.
Well, it goes back to the whole concept of zero-based budgeting. You don't just roll things over every year because that's what you're doing, but it's zero-based. It's we're starting out with nothing, and we're going to put things in as we see they are warranted, and they're going to generate an ROI. And that's what you have to have with your sales process every quarter. Every quarter, you've got to be assessing that.
Yeah, I love it, Dwayne. Showing up shows your prospect you are available even when times are tough. It shows your support. Dwayne, what I love what you're saying about this is I think I could do a whole show about this next statement I am about to make. Salespeople, we have got to show the customer that it is more about them than it is about us. And let me talk about the selfish piece of that. If I am out making a sales call and Natalie is calling on the customer, Dave is calling on the customer, Dwayne and Mark, I've got to differentiate myself. And one of the best ways to differentiate yourself is to invest in the customer before you ask them to invest in you. Why? Because sales training is designed, most of the sales training people have come through, it is what do you need to do to hit your goal? What do you need to do to close the sale? What do you need to do to get to the decision maker? You, and the customer is left out of that equation. And when you go in and you go, you know what? I don't know what you're going through. I'm going to try to help you. I'm going to try to figure it out. I realize things are tough. There is just a piece of you that says you are a different type of salesperson.
And you run with whatever they share with you,
Yeah.
and you just ask another question. You just ask. I apply what I call the 7 deep process. I'm going to go 7 questions deep on whatever it is that you share with me. Maybe not on that one call, but over a series of calls. But what it truly allows me to do, it's going to allow me to get deeper with that customer. Because ultimately what's going to happen is the customer's going to see things that they didn't even realize.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're going to be the one that's going to help them find that solution. So, hey, Regina, this is your opportunity to excel. This is your opportunity to shine. Any salesperson out there. And I'll tell you what, we're going to be seeing this all the way through to November because every company is making the, there's an election. We need to just hold back. That is a big, giant excuse. And it just says that you got to hone your skills and go out and make it happen.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of understandable. I mean, I know a lot of companies that I work with, based on how the election goes, it does impact their strategic plan. And they're not making decisions out of a negative or a fear thing. They've got to see where the ball lands to decide where to put the resources, right? And so, but you have to be with them through every single part of that process. I mean, it's not, in my opinion, with a lot of companies I'm working with, it's not so much about the election in the US. There's some really volatile elections in other countries that based on how those elections land, my customers have got to decide whether they're going to stay in that country or they're going to pull out of that country. And so it's understandably that the process is slowing down. But if I don't show up right now, then I'm gonna miss it when those decisions are made.
And one of the most fascinating things is to listen to companies' quarterly earnings and when times are tough, the excuses that they make. Amazon came out, and I wish I could remember them, but they came out with some very creative reasons. Yassi said as to why their volume didn't, their sales didn't measure up to expectations. So hey, you know what? You got to put those aside. You can't control it. You cannot control any of that. But you can still have that conversation.
All right, Mark, I think it's time for the book.
We're getting
ready to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, right. John Maxwell, High Road Leadership. Talk about it, because you were just with John the other day.
Yeah, I had a great opportunity to have dinner with John Maxwell and his wife. Just 6 of us at dinner, and I got to sit right down next to him and sit at the seat of the master and really hear. This is his brand new book, and what is High Road Leadership about? High Road Leadership is about why we really don't have leaders today, that the job of a leader is to bring people together. And he's got 9 steps on what it really takes to be a high road leader. But I was listening to him talk and I was reading the book. And in my opinion, there are 9 steps and 9 strategies that every sales professional needs to have. And I think one of the most important that goes with the conversation today is he said, you cannot be in leadership. In my opinion, you cannot be in sales if you do not value people. He was talking about the fact that that both Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill, when they went into leadership positions, put people with very diverse opinions in their cabinets, people they didn't agree with at all, and people that very ugly things had been said between them. And when both were asked why, Abraham Lincoln said, because the Civil War is more important than my opinion. And I'm going to translate that into what we're talking about today, is that the helping your customer is far more important than your sales goal. Just is. And so sometimes you get into a conversation and you're not the best person to help them. And you've got to connect them to the person that does. But the thing that I know, and this is the point that John was making in the book, when you do the right things, when you follow those laws, when you value people, your sales goal will take care of itself. Just will.
And I love the title of the book. It's why I love to say sales is leadership. Leadership is sales. John proves that. Hey, lightning round. Best places to find ideas for content creation. Go.
Number 1, from your customers. Let every single pain point they have out there.
Number 2, look at your industry. Study your industry.
Yeah. Number 3, I do this all the time. I look at really high-rated podcasts and pick out their highest-rated shows.
Oh, so like Sales Logic,
yeah,
right?
Like Sales Logic,
That's right. Yeah. And number 4 is study your customers' customers. What can you learn from them?
Yeah, I would say number 5, really talk to your sales team and the other people selling, and get a feel for what are some of the biggest pain points that are coming up over and over again.
Number 6, do long form reading. What that means is that that's not just a blog, but you actually read a book. For some of you, that may be a novel idea.
Number 7, ideas, what you see coming down the pipe, what you think your people need to be focused on, and really thinking about, if these are the challenges, what's coming next, and how do you build a blog to educate them.
Number 8, surround yourself with voices that you can learn from, voices that you can bounce ideas off of.
Yeah. And number 9, I'm going to say anything that's going new and different in your business, new products that you're developing, new events that you're attending, awards that you've gotten. Find ways to write about that in a way that is valuable for the customer.
And number 10, get involved in Sales Logic Mastermind. We're adding a new feature in the month of August. It's going to be coming out every month from now, where we're going to be doing a deep dive interview with a really top leading individual. And it's going to be your opportunity to do some interaction and engaging, because again, you have to surround yourself with the right people. And again, that's why I can't encourage you enough to get into Sales Logic Mastermind. Go to Sales Logic Podcast, and man, all the details are right there.
God, so now we've got the Intel engine. Now we've got the regular interviews with leading experts. We've got the regular mastermind, and we've got the Sales Logic brain. A lot happening.
And of course, we have the vault of just all the learning assets. So anyway, jump out to saleslogicpodcast.com. You'll find all the information there. Hey, with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. If something we've said has earned you a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott, Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right. We will see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic. Until then, go out, close a deal, send your questions, any ideas, any topics you want on this podcast to saleslogicpodcast.com. We'll see you next week. Love this audience.